We begin in South Africa, where David Mabuza, the former deputy president of South Africa, has resigned from his position. This opens the door for Paul Mashatile to take over as the new deputy president, who is also the new deputy leader of the governing African National Congress. According to ANC tradition, the top two government posts usually mirror the leadership of the ANC. Mashatile, who was previously the ANC's Treasurer General, is expected to be sworn in as a member of the National Assembly on the 6th of February, signalling his entrance into the executive branch.
Now, Vincent Magwenya, the spokesman for President Cyril Ramaphosa, stated that Mabuza had expressed a desire to step down following the outcome of the ANC leadership elections in December 2022. But Ramaphosa has asked him to remain until the transition is finalized. Mashatile's appointment and other cabinet changes are expected to be announced in the coming days. And now joining us for this conversation, we have joining us all the way from South Africa, Sanusha Naidu, political analyst, Institute of Global Dialogue, who joins us from Cape Town. We also have Sello Lediga, Chairperson, Action SA, joining us from Limpopo Province. We also have Dr. Hlengiwe Ndlovu, Senior Lecturer, Wits School of Governance, University of Witwatersrand, joining us from Johannesburg. Thank you so much for joining us on the conversation at this time.
Good evening, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, now begin with you, Sanusha. I mean, we've heard different takes on the resignation of David Mabuza, especially the opposition saying he shouldn't have done that at a funeral meeting. But can you take us through David Mabuza's background and political journey, which led to his appointment as the deputy president of South Africa?
He comes into the position based on how he played the unity card in the 2017 elective conference of the party. And based on how that played out, he became quite an important actor within the context of providing President Ramaphosa at the time the elective conference presidency, the votes. And that kind of threw stuff off kilter, particularly around the other premiers, Premier from Northwest at the time, as well as the Premier of the Free State. And of course, at that point, the Premier League, in other words, these very, very important and strategic premiers of provinces of Mpumalanga, Free State, and Northwest, were essentially kind of key actors, key strategic stakeholders in the outcome of that elective conference. And so, based on that, Deputy President Mabuza comes into the fold. He's given the vice presidency of the party, and hence, of course, we know that the ANC is a creature of habit, and so they like to align what happens in the party to what goes on within the republic of the country. And so they kept that alignment in terms of the way in which the president then, at the time, was convinced to resign. That was former President Zuma. And then, of course, President Ramaphosa became interim president, and then we went through the whole motion of the election and thereafter. I think where we are now, 5 years later, is the fact that David Mabuza has not made the cut on the National Executive Council. And that was the elective conference that took place in December and finished its business in January. And of course, there's been these inclinations and these circling rumors that he hadn't necessarily found the traction to compete, to try for a re-election in terms of position. And this is in the run-up to the elective conference last year, where there were all of these different dynamics emerging around Paul Mashatile and the fact that he was becoming quite an important strategic actor within the party. He was Treasurer General at the time. Of course, we know that the ANC's finances are not the best at the moment, but we can't lay that on the door of Paul Mashatile. And of course, there's this question about how do you then get the current VP of the party into government. And of course, the first port of call is to become a member of parliament. And this is what happened this morning. So he and three other ANC NEC members, as well as one other of the top 7, have been sworn in as members of parliament. And to do that, you've got to follow the way in which the whole process unfolds. So if it was a national MP, it would be very difficult to have brought in Paul Mashatile. So it is actually from the list from the provinces. So it's like for like. So if you are a member of the National Assembly and you are brought and you are elected through the provincial list, in other words, the 200 members that make up the provincial list, province to national, then you can actually bring in Paul Mashatile, and that's what happened. That's what happened with Paul Mashatile. There was a Gauteng MP that resigned. Paul Mashatile then filled that vacancy, and it was like for the others in terms of KZN and, of course, the other provinces. I think the other was Limpopo. So this is where we are right now. The question now remains is what will happen between now and the President's State of the Nation address on Thursday evening, and whether or not Paul Mashatile will be sworn in before that as Vice President or Deputy President of the country. He was asked this question by reporters today after he was sworn in as MP, and he was very coy about this situation.
Thank you, Sanusha. I'd like to bring Dr. Ndlovu from Johannesburg. Now, Dr. Ndlovu, since President Ramaphosa named David Mabuza as his deputy in 2018, how has Mabuza been involved in the South African government and political landscape? And do you see this resignation as the end of his political ambitions? Is this the end of David Mabuza and politics in South Africa?
So I agree with a lot of what Sanusha, my colleague from Cape Town, has said in terms of the political role of the Deputy President, David Mabuza. So mapping him from Nazareth 2017, the conference that elected him as the Deputy President, and then moving through 2018, where he was sworn in as the Deputy President. And if we track a little bit back, I would remember that even his coming in to be sworn in was a little bit delayed, and South African citizens started speculating around the reasons for the delays, but we were not sure in terms of why was he delaying, but of course there were other issues that were being sorted out. But I think both the Deputy President, David Mabuza, and the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, came in an unfortunate, time. Their timing in politics was very unfortunate in that it collided with the global pandemic of COVID-19, where a lot of work needed to be done. And at some point, they were punching above their weight, as it was expected so. But that being said, I don't think we've seen a lot of David Mabuza on the picture of the South African politics since 2018. There were moments where the country was really in a crisis, and we needed to see that deputy president figure really stepping in, to show the support to the president, but also the presence and the confidence of his office to the South African public. But that wasn't happening that much. So hearing him saying he's resigned, especially announcing it the way he did, I don't think it's coming as a surprise. If we take back a little bit to last year, December 2022 at Nazareth, where he was nominated for the position of the president and then he declined. And maybe other people expected that he was going to come back again as one person who's known as a strategic political player, but we didn't see him coming. So a lot of eyes who are watching the South African politics have been left wondering in terms of what is his next move. If he's not in the cabinet, where is he headed to? And then his resignation is not coming as a surprise, I think, to many of us, because he wasn't a very present, deputy president. And maybe we can argue to a certain extent that he just came into that position conveniently so, because he had the numbers behind him and he was the match player of the 2017 conference that elected him. So him resigning today, I don't think it leaves a huge gap in terms of his office because he was unavailable anyway. But we're yet to see how the politics unfold from that moment.
Definitely. Now, Sello, still looking at how the politics will unfold. Now, we saw David Mabuza come in and announce his resignation even before he resigned at a funeral meeting in Mpumalanga, and there are a lot of talks about it. Now, Sello, how do you see this going forward in the ANC? I mean, you have the president. He did not mention anything about resignation, but we had David Mabuza, first of all, come out and say he's going to resign and that the president will soon announce resignation. And we have this ANC conference in December. So how come we're having all of this unfolding right now in February?
David Mabuza, popularly known as DD of the CAT, reads South African politics very well. In December at the conference, he declined when he was nominated for both deputy president and member of the National Executive Committee, because he had already read the internal dynamics of the African National Congress that he would not be re-elected as a deputy president. So instead of embarrassing himself and standing against others, like a good tactician, he chose to decline all the nominations. And now he knows very well that in the African National Congress, the president of the ANC becomes the president of the country. The deputy president of the ANC becomes the deputy president of the country. And now that he is no longer deputy president and Paul Mashatile has been elected deputy president, it clearly gives way to Mashatile to say, okay, here's your position, I will leave and not wait to be fired. Remember, constitutionally, he is appointed by the president of the country, just like other cabinet ministers. So it is Ramaphosa's call to decide whether he becomes deputy president or not, So I think with a good pension and lifelong salary and bodyguards and all that, he decides cleverly that, look, there's no fight here. I am no longer the leader of the African National Congress, and I cannot wait, until to be removed by the president. So the best thing is just to say thank you very much. My time has come to an end. We're not sure how active he is going to remain in the African National Congress, because as we speak, he's probably now just an ordinary member of the party, does not have any regional, provincial position. Remember, he's one of the strong men who come from the provinces of South Africa called Mpumalanga, and with the likes of Ace Mahashule and Supra Magumape. So he's just simply saying, I've played my part. I don't think I still have anything serious to do. Let me step aside in order to avoid embarrassment. And I'd like to take my head off from most politicians wait until they are pushed, But this one says, okay, Mr. President, let me not make life difficult for you. Because Ramaphosa still believes that the oath for the assistance that he gave him in 2017. So I think he's a good man. He's going to retire nicely. Unless, because it's always called the cat, he reappears in another way, because we all know that a cat has 9 lives.
Okay, you're not writing him his political future off just yet. Now, Sanusha, South Africa as a country is currently facing challenges. The ANC is facing challenges such as blackouts, unemployment, poverty. And how will these issues impact the future of the party and the country? And also, bearing in mind that President Ramaphosa is expected to name a new cabinet soon, what are expectations from this cabinet? Will they fix these issues that are bedeviling the country of South Africa? I do understand that over the weekend, the South African Business Forum did meet and said, President Ramaphosa, please appoint people that have the capacity to fix some of these issues. So what are your expectations?
Is when President Ramaphosa does the reshuffle. I mean, President Ramaphosa, unlike President Zuma, didn't do a reshuffle. I think there was only once in the last term, and we're coming back up to his second term for next year if he does get. Of course, if he is re-elected according to party structures for the Republic of the country, is whether or not he's going to reshuffle before State of the Nation on Thursday evening, or after State of the Nation on Thursday evening. And this is the big challenge, I think, for President Ramaphosa, is because he's got he's got 1 or 2 vacancies that he has to actually fill. But of course, now with the question of David Mabuza and saying that he has sent out his resignation letter to the president, over the weekend we saw newspaper articles suggesting that Ramaphosa is taking it under advisement. He's actually asking the current deputy president of the Republic to hang on. And this is what his spokesperson had indicated in particular responses to media requests about what is going on. Now, the question here is 2 things. One is the question of the reshuffle. But it's also the question of the ANC and how they're going to deal with their internal crisis. So the internal crisis and the renewal issue that the president spoke about in his closing address to the elective conference last year, and of course, well, the one closing address that he made to the elective conference last year, and then of course the closing address that happened this year in terms of the finished business of the conference, is that he talks about renewal a lot. But the challenge of renewal is that you have to basically think about renewal not only while you're thinking about maintaining your position as ruling party of the state. And that is a very, very difficult task to juggle and maneuver around. So this multitasking of renewing what is the crisis of the party and how that crisis of the party extends into the crisis of the state is going to be critical. I'm not completely optimistic that a reshuffle is going to actually deal with the crisis of where we are currently in the Republic of South Africa. The crisis is intense. It's manifesting itself in all kinds of acute ways.
Why are you not...
It's not just about electricity problems. It is the entire institutional architecture. And we are seeing much more of this emerge in terms of daily life. So I think at the end of the day, when listening to various other radio stations and listening to ordinary South Africans phoning in about what their expectations are, not just of the reshuffle, but of what the president is going to do moving forward, it's really about the lived experience. The fact of the matter is not so much about whether you put the right people in the right job or you don't put the right people in the right job. I mean, that's the big challenge with the ANC, is this question of cadre deployment, and we saw the opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, take the ruling party, the ANC, to court, demanding for them to basically give the documents on cadre deployment to be able to access that. And the judge ruled in their favor, in the Democratic Alliance's favor, for them to get access to that documentation. Now the ANC is going to take it under review and appeal. So I think the problem here is basically, how do you deal with the crisis of the party? But then at the same time, that crisis becomes the crisis of the state. And I think that is the challenge right now, is whether the party is actually dealing with its own crisis.
Okay, I'm going to bring Dr. Ndlovu into all of this now, still looking at the state of the nation, and of course the deputy president resigning. Now, Sanusha is talking about internal party wranglings also affecting the state of the nation presently. What are your expectations? Do you think that this is a major setback for President Ramaphosa, knowing that he was also re-elected at the ANC conference in December? What are your expectations so far?
Expectations, from the cabinet reshuffle or the new cabinet that's incoming. And the reason why I'm saying that, it is because in the past 5 to 10 years, we haven't seen the ANC actually doing much in terms of service delivery and fixing the crisis in the country. What we've seen rather is the cabinet setup has always all about consolidating particular factions within the cabinet. So putting strategic people at strategic positions where they do not have the expertise, to perform at that level, but they're just there to serve particular political alignments, to make sure that they keep each other as the term runs. So to pick up the conversation from the idea of the renewal that emerged from Nasrec again, as the president's new buzzword. I mean, in 2017, he emerged with taking care of corruption, and it was his huge ticket, to try and build and restore confidence to the South Africans that he was going to fight corruption. But now he's coming with the renewal. But when you're looking at the renewal program, you're seeing almost the same faces that have been there. Of course, a little change here and there. We haven't seen much of a concrete gender transformation within the NEC, and we haven't seen much of the youth. And the youth of the country is very important because we're all moving to the 4IR. And then fourth industrial revolution requires young people with the good expertise, with the know-how of the technology. Some of these people are in the cabinet, they don't even know how to operate their cell phones. And sitting there trying to compete with the globalizing world, with the changing world, and not having the expertise and the skills to deal with the crisis, it's a very, very big problem. But it is, it is very key for the ANC to take serious the project of renewal, fixing ESCOM right now and all other entities, because the country is in a total mess right now as we speak. But as they're headed for the 2024 national government elections, it is in their favor to try and do the best to sort out some of the issues that are at the face of the South Africans in the everyday, so that they can restore confidence.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ndlovu. Now, Sello, I'd like to have the final say before we wrap up conversation on this. In your expert opinion, what could we expect to see in future developments of South African politics, given the changes in leadership in the current political landscape? We've been hearing renewal. Even in the next few weeks, the ESCOM chair, MD, the CEO, Andrew de Ruyter, is expected to resign. So what are your expectations for the future and the political landscape in South Africa?
Thank you. South Africa enters a new phase next year at the general election. The ANC has been in power for 29 years and it will be 30 years next year. For the first time, the ANC will not be able to win an election outright. And from its own internal polling, it has even dropped below 40%. The newspaper reports indicated that it is at about 37%. If that is correct, it means it would have fallen from 57 in 2019 to 37 in 2024. That is a whopping 20%. It is not surprising because of the situation in the country. The ANC has failed in every respect to maintain the infrastructure that it inherited from the apartheid government. The ANC has probably stolen more than any other government since 1910 with the advent of the Union of South Africa. The people of South Africa have lost hope in the African National Congress as the leading liberation movement that led them to freedom. So what we're going to see is South Africa entering a new multi-party phase of its history, whereby there is no single party that will be able to govern on its own. For the ANC to govern, if these polls are true, it will require smaller parties, to support it with about 13%. That is a huge number by any standard, So there is also a possibility that if the other coalition partners can come together successfully, the ANC could be dethroned. And South Africa has a possibility of seeing a multi-party national government, something that has never happened, in the last 30 years. So it's exciting times in South Africa. The African National Congress is in a crisis. It cannot take care of its people. And all we can say is that let us move into the future of multi-parties in South Africa and let the best men win.
Quite a damning verdict on the African National Congress. I'd like to say a big thank you to our guest, Dr. Hlengiwe Ndlovu, Senior Lecturer at Wits University School of Governance at University of the Witwatersrand. Join us from Johannesburg. And also Sanusha Naidu, Political Analyst at the Institute of Global Dialogue, joins from Cape Town. And of course, yours truly, Sello Lediga, Chairperson, Action Essay, who joined in from Limpopo. Thank you for your contribution,
Thank you.
Your time and insight. We appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.